Hi there. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jeff Stone, the editor-in-chief of CyberScoop. I'm happy to be joined today by Jonathan Nguyen, the vice president for the global Field CISO Team at Fortinet. Jonathan, thank you for being here. First, I'm hoping you can tell us how the pandemic has impacted the way that government organizations must think about cybersecurity.
Yeah. So it's impacted government organizations and private sector organizations in many of the same ways. I think
Sure.
everyone right now is trying to find secure and seamless ways for their stakeholders, those digital citizens, to interact with government services. How do you make those services more easily accessible? How do you make sure that the mission outcome is achieved? And it's all around this notion of contactless commerce, right? So all these things that used to be face-to-face engagements are now being virtualized, but those requirements still exist. And so what we're seeing are public sector organizations adopting more cloud solutions. They're adopting applications that allow the citizens to interact with governments and a more immediate ability, and the ability just to deliver services without having to have that physical contact. At the same time, we're seeing government organizations, local, state, and national, really adopt consolidation strategies. Because one thing that hasn't changed over the last 9 months has been the budget, right? In fact, they're being asked to do more with less in some cases. And so we're seeing opportunities to consolidate technology platforms, principally around both the security function and the networking capability. So what you're seeing are things like next generation firewalls that now have an SD-WAN capability.
As agencies look to transform and modernize their security, which elements are most important for ensuring their success?
Sure. So I think moving forward, remote working is going to be a standard operating model. I think
Right.
prior to the pandemic, there was probably 8 to maybe 10% of most public sector organizations where they had remote workers. One of the latest estimates I saw forecast that some 40% of all American workers are going to work remotely, at least part-time, if not full-time, going forward. And so I think security is going to be centered around themes and principles of zero trust networking. This notion that only the right people or appropriate people or entities, things, if you will, IoT, are able to access application resources at the right time. And you need to log and monitor all of those sessions. So zero trust networking is going to be standard pillar of security, but at the same time, we're going to need to see security across both the LAN edge, the WAN edge, and the cloud edge, because computing is much more distributed now. We've got remote workers, you've got edge-based computing, you've got private clouds and data centers, but increasingly hybrid multi-cloud environments as well. So I think moving forward, you're going to need to see security integrated with networking, with the compute element, because if the object of the exercise now is to deliver and achieve the mission outcome as well as an enhanced end user experience, you've got to operate and think about those three elements in an integrated fashion. So look, you may have great compute and application performance, but the mission outcome isn't achieved because a networking component wasn't optimized and those citizens couldn't access those applications. And if they can access those applications and it's not secure, then the whole thing falls apart. And so I think one of the big lessons over the last 9 months is that we really need to think about security in an integrated fashion with both the compute element and the networking piece. And at Fortinet, we call that security-driven networking. And I think the industry is finally catching on to that. You see that manifested in things like SASE, this notion of secure access service edges, which represents that vision that you have to have security across that LAN edge, the wide area network edge, and the cloud edge to deliver those two things.
How do modern technologies like artificial intelligence bolster cybersecurity?
Oh, yeah, heck yeah. One of the big lessons over the last 9 months has been as more and more organizations try to become cloud natives overnight. Well, the one thing that doesn't scale when you moved into the cloud are people. So there's acute shortages of cloud and security architects that were there before the pandemic and the rush of cloud adoption. Well, they're still there today. And in fact, as we see the level of complexity rise, it's becoming pretty obvious now that humans really are not the best way of addressing the volume, the variety, or indeed the velocity of data that's going to be generated. And so absolutely AI to do a couple of things. But in order for AI to really be effective, right now we've got a pretty mature prevention platform, detection platform, and orchestration response platforms. But AI, when you add to that, like our Fortinet Security Fabric, this broad, integrated, and automated platform, when powered by AI, now it gives you the ability to quickly see across a very distributed ecosystem, to understand contextually what is happening, then to act in an automated fashion. So you think about things like automated playbooks, the ability to detect and mitigate vulnerabilities, the ability to really discern across millions of sessions to see what is anomalous versus malicious behavior. And in fact, when we looked at our virtual security analyst, which is an AI platform, we were able to demonstrate at week 5 that our virtual security analyst was outperforming the average SOC analyst, human SOC analyst, because humans are good, bad, or indifferent, whereas machine learning and AI is inherently self-learning and continually improving. By week 10, we were able to demonstrate that our FortiGuard, our FortiAI virtual security analyst was the equivalent of 5 average human SOC analysts. And a fully loaded SOC analyst in any major US city is about $250,000. So there's an ROI or cost savings on the order of some $800 to $1 million and a performance improvement by a factor of 5, right? And so that's just a small example of what you can do when you have AI. But AI is only relevant and indeed impactful if it can be applied in a platform that's really broad, integrated, and that can be automated. Without those elements, it's like intelligence, right? Everyone says there's actionable intelligence. Well, intelligence isn't actionable unless it can be applied. And so I think that's one of the big aha moments over the last 9 months is that need to consolidate and integrate. Yeah.
Is zero trust the real deal, or is it just a buzzword?
No, it's the real deal. I mean, it's been around since 2009, right? It was posited back then that the idea that traffic inside that hardware-defined perimeter, that enterprise firewall and that enterprise perimeter, should not be trusted any more than traffic outside that perimeter. And it's a novel idea. But suddenly, beginning this year, 90+% of us are now working outside that enterprise perimeter. And so therefore, zero trust is going to be very important moving forward. But it's not just a buzzword, it's really a couple of principles that every request for network access is identified, the person or the entity is authenticated, the request is validated, then everything is logged and monitored to determine whether it's malicious or anomalous or whether it should just go forth. It's the idea that trust should not be binary, yes or no, that trust is continually assessed. So absolutely moving forward. The reason why is because we're going to have more and more people and entities requesting network access from a broad number of locations, from home, remote, branch offices, agencies, state, local, federal, you name it, across a wide area network from a distributed environment when they're on net and off net to multiple clouds. And so I think zero trust, those principles we just outlined, are going to be pillars moving forward on the security side of the house. On the networking side of the house, it's going to be defined by software-defined wide area network, and increasingly this notion of secure access service edges.
Jonathan, that's a lot in a short amount of time, but that's all I have for you. Thank you again for joining us. We will be sure to talk to you again soon.
Always. Take care. Looking forward to the next time.
Thanks.